Jacob. Is this on?
Good evening. If you can come in and find your seat, we're going to get started in a minute. We still got some people walking around. This is a good time to actually order a meal, order a beer or a wine or what have you from the bar, and settle in for what will be a very interesting evening talking about human trafficking. My name is Phil Robertson. I'm the director of the Asia Human Rights and Labor Advocates, and I'm also a member of the FCCT Board of Directors. Already getting feedback. In any case, I want to welcome you here to the FCCT. Some of you may already be getting this. I'm holding in my hand the FCCT Bulletin, which is our weekly newsletter that comes out. You can subscribe to it for free at the website of the FCCT on the contact page, and that way you'll never miss an FCCT event. But since I've got you all here as a captive audience, I'm going to tell you a couple things that are coming in the coming weeks or so that I think would be of interest. We have an extremely busy month here at the FCCT. First, coming up on the 18th, that's next Monday, we have a Taiwan movie night, Absent Without Leave. This is a film actually based in Perak, Malaysia, talking about a family's involvement in the independence struggle for Malaysia and remembrance. We're going to have on the 20th of November in the morning a launch of the Landmines Global Monitoring Report. We'll have a star-studded panel that will also include Jody Williams, who's one of the Nobel Peace Laureates, who will be joining by video, but also people talking about what is happening with landmines around the world, the ongoing effort to ban landmines. The 21st in the evening, that's Thursday the 21st at 7 p.m., we'll have a book about Cambodia, The Politics of Coercion, by Neil Laughlin, who's a lecturer from the UK. This will be an excellent night to talk about what's happening in Cambodia. It's a country that many journalists based in Bangkok do cover from Thailand, especially since the restrictions on independent media have grown deeper and stronger since the post-COVID pandemic. Many of the people here on the panel are actually good friends with Mek Dara, who's someone who's been involved in investigating scam centers in Cambodia and was recently arrested on bogus charges. Now he's been released on bail, but the price of that may be his journalist career, since he had to promise the government that he would stop being a reporter. So that will be on the 21st, very interesting evening. For cat lovers, on the 27th, we'll have Thailand cat poems and cat culture. Quite something. There are pictures of the cats in the newsletter. Talking about Thailand's famous cat poems. I didn't know about them, but I will know them now because I'll be here for Martin Clutterbuck, who is the author of Siamese Cats, Legends and Reality. He'll be speaking about his book there. A journalist calling. We'll also have a lunchtime event on the 29th of November with the former Singapore Foreign Minister George Yeo here in the club speaking about his recent book. And then on the 4th of December, we'll have a Burma night talking about independent journalists and artists in Myanmar, what they've faced since the military coup, and a selection of their work. We'll have a new exhibition, art exhibition here, and we'll have a number of the people speaking about that. So it's a very, very eventful period of time at the club, and I hope that you are able to come. Tonight we're talking about scam centers, and we're talking not just about the scam centers that many people know about happening in Myanmar, Laos, and in Cambodia, but also talking about the very courageous NGO activists and journalists who have been investigating these scam centers, finding out what's happening, how people are being trafficked into those scam centers and being victimized, in addition to victimizing people because of the forced criminality that they're compelled to engage in at those centers. And we have today a panel of a number of those courageous journalists and activists who are going to talk to us about their work, what they've been doing, how they've uncovered these issues, how they investigated, what are some of the solutions have been found, what are some of the remaining challenges, and also in some cases, what are the recommendations they have for various different members of the international community, whether it be governments, UN agencies, journalists, or NGO activists. So to kick us off tonight, we're going to start with Michelle Moore, who's right here. Michelle is a gender-based violence advocate and anti-human trafficking specialist with more than 15 years of experience in child protection across the Asia Pacific. She's also the chief executive officer of Global Alms Incorporated and the founder of Yes, She Matters, which is a trauma-informed, client-centered, survivor-led program for victims and survivors of human trafficking and gender-based violence crimes. She holds various different diplomas in relevant fields. She provides consultation, training, and seminars on anti-trafficking strategies to a number of key players, including the Royal Thai Police, the Australian Defence Force, Australian Federal Police, international civil society organizations, and others. And she's also an adjunct lecturer at a number of different universities, which she can tell you about. In any case, I've asked her to kick off the event talking a little bit about the situation of scam centers in neighboring Myanmar and Laos.
Thank you. Good evening. Like I said, Phil said, I work for Global Alms Incorporated, so we've been based on the Thailand-Myanmar border now in Mesot for 13 years. And we started out in prevention, and then we very quickly moved into protection. So we started out with protection with our Yes, She Matters program, which was purely gender-based violence and child trafficking. We built a good rapport with Royal Thai Police, working with the hospital and with the Ministry of Social Welfare and Human Security, with TARC Immigration. And so relying on those relationships as direct service providers, we're able to go in an emergency when someone calls our hotline and respond directly with police to an incident. In 2022, Royal Thai Police called us with the first scamming case that came out in Mesot that went under the National Referral Mechanism, which is Thailand's process for supporting and protecting victims of trafficking. They were new to operating under the NRM, and so it was a bit of a journey of discovery at the time. And we worked together with police and with the government in processing those cases. It looks very different now, 2 years on. But back when it was first starting, it caught us all by surprise. So I don't know if many of you were here in 2020, but during 2020 we were all in lockdown, right, for a long time. In Mesot, I think we were in lockdown for almost 2.5 years because we were a border province. During that time, Global Alms was able still to operate Yes, She Matters as our emergency response program. So while everybody else had shut down their NGOs and were staying at home during the days, we would be on calls with police or responding to emergencies within local communities. We would see along the border in Myanmar the construction that was happening, even though we were all supposed to be in lockdown. And we didn't really know what it was for. We, on this side of the country, did not have a grasp on what was happening in Cambodia or the Golden Triangle. And that's partly our naivety, we were working in a different space at the time. But looking at those compounds, the construction sites, we didn't realize the devastating effect it was going to have, not just on the landscape, but globally, for victims of human trafficking, as well as victims of scams. Fast forward to 2022, when that first case came out, it all dawned on us, oh my gosh, there's thousands and thousands of people stuck in these compounds now. The first one along the Thai-Myanmar border was KK Park, the first established compound, and that's grown now. There's 5 of them. There's KK 1 to 5 now. It's so big. We have 20 to 30 large compounds along the Myanmar-Thai border, and the early estimates was around 10,000 victims in each compound at their original size, so it's estimated around 120,000 victims of trafficking within Myanmar in those compounds. Just recently, I was down at across from Tai Chung in Chong Kep, which is just south of Popra, looking across at the 3 compounds there, and at the back of Jauki, which is one of the compounds, there are rows and rows of 2-story townhouses. Within those townhouses, there's companies that are set up waiting for a new compound to be built. And at every single compound along the border, there is ongoing construction. So it is just continual expansion. Now, those companies that are waiting for a compound to be built, they are going out within the next month or so, and they're relocating into their new compound. Then a new company comes in and takes their place. So it's like this never-ending cycle. I want to talk about the devastation that this does have on victims and families, but I do apologize if this triggers anybody or upsets anyone. I'll try and keep it as clean as I can, okay? So, as a direct service provider, we are in constant communication with victims of human trafficking stuck inside the compounds. So I have a phone dedicated specifically for victims who are currently trapped within the compounds. We are also referred cases by families, embassies, and then government officials and other NGOs. There's only a few civil society or NGOs operating in Mesot running these cases at the moment, so there's only a few of us on the ground. The majority of NGOs that have funding or work towards providing a solution for this or contributing to cases aren't actually based in Mesot. So they have to then travel down to Mesot, or they have to refer the case on to us. When we come in contact with victims, it could be weeks or months that we're in communication with them before they even get out of the compounds. If they are fortunate enough to get out of the compound, then you have a very long process to refer them through the government national referral mechanism before they can then repatriate home. That involves different things like reporting to immigration, taking statements, making sure that they can be identified as a victim of trafficking first, and then locating their families and repatriating. It's quite an ordeal. The experiences that we have that have been shared with us by victims of trafficking range anywhere from being beaten or punished for not reaching their scamming targets to being maimed, and then there has even been cases of death. So people have not made it out of the compounds. From a direct service provider, dealing with these cases, it's very challenging, but I'm not the one going through it, right? They're the ones experiencing this. What I will say is, no matter what country you come from or what mechanism you have in place, there is always re-victimization when it comes to identifying victims of trafficking and then repatriating them home. It is never a simple process, and it is a very complex process. So when we're talking about these compounds and cybercrime and this issue of human trafficking, I want you to please remember them and keep them in mind when we're dealing with that issue. Because at the core of this is people's lives. It's not just people losing money, it's people losing their freedom and their liberty, and people being brutalized. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very succinct, very clear. We'll have a lot of chance to speak to Michelle also during the question and answer period. We're going to have an extensive question and answer period, and so everybody should be thinking about the kind of questions you want to ask her in the panel. Next, we're going to hear from Jacob Sims. He's a columnist for The Diplomat. He's also a founding partner of Operation Shamrock, hashtag Operation Shamrock, which is a global public-private coalition working to disrupt Southeast Asia's organized cybercrime epidemic. He's previously served in country, regional, and global leadership roles for at the International Justice Mission. He's led policy research at the College of William and Mary, and he's conducted human rights research in northern Myanmar. And his analysis regularly figures in major media outlets, or he talked to a couple people here today who just interviewed him. And we have an ongoing sort of discussions about the kind of forums that have come into town this week to talk about human trafficking issues where he's played a central role. Jake started looking at these issues in Cambodia, so I've asked him to sort of explain what's going on in Cambodia and also touch on Laos if you get a chance.
Sure, will do. Thanks, Phil. And we had one of our esteemed panelists drop out the last moment, and Phil kindly gave me permission to grandstand longer than my allotted 10 minutes, so apologies. And I want to just, as I'm following Michelle, I want to start by framing my comments within the reality in both of these two contexts, and Lao even more pronounced. The number of people who are working to respond to this issue that everyone probably here recognizes as a major global issue at this point is really, really small. And Michelle has not articulated this in her comments, but she is one of the only people, in spite of the global importance of this, that's actually doing this on the ground in Myanmar. And so I also want to start off by clarifying that I'm representing the similar community in Cambodia. I'm not actually based in Cambodia. I was there for a number of years, and started responding to this back in 2021. But not actually based there, but just sort of entering this with a ton of respect for the people in both contexts who are. And I think most of what I'd like to talk about is why it is so difficult to work on this issue in Cambodia. And so that is going to take a little bit of a backstory. So first of all, press freedom, civic space in Cambodia more broadly has been shrinking for a number of years. We've seen a lot of the key independent press outlets shuttered from the Cambodian Daily in 2017, the co-option of the Phnom Penh Post in 2019, the shuttering of VOD in 2023. And in parallel, you've seen simultaneously expulsion of some of the key NGOs, 2015, 2017, 2019, Mother Nature, NDI, some of these cases that many will be familiar on. And the people who have remained in press or otherwise civil society have faced a situation of mounting intimidation, surveillance, etc. And so backing up even further, civil society in Cambodia has always been an explicit or was an explicit product of the UNTAC intervention in 1993. And it's something that was only ever superficially accepted by the Cambodian People's Party. And as the ruling party's dependence on the West has lessened over the years, this sort of negotiated settlement has also been pretty much systematically eroded. And that's sort of the 50,000-foot view of the Cambodian civil society context. It is grim. But maybe even more disturbing than that is the significant accelerating impact that this issue of human trafficking fueled organized cybercrime has caused on that sort of troubling trend toward closing civic space. And so from the moment of the very first English language reporting on this issue in December 2021, the Cambodian government has responded swiftly, aggressively, antagonistically, denying the existence of the issue, implying that any and all reports were emanating from opposition party motivations, color revolutionaries, and so on and so forth. And very quickly you saw a mounting campaign of intimidation and surveillance against the small number of people working on this issue back in early 2022 that culminated, initially at least, in the arrest, the charge, conviction, and imprisonment of one activist and the rather swift and untimely exit of a few others between March and June of 2022. Now, by late 2022, and apologies for the history lesson here, but I think this is Mek Dara's pictures here, and I want to contextualize why this is sort of important. By late 2022, issues pretty much too large to ignore or to deny outright. You had a number of actually people in this room who had released major exposés in international elite media. You had multiple reports from the UN confirming the size, the scale, the egregious nature of what was going on. And so the government switched from outright denial to more of a denial of scale, various tactics to obscure the actual nature of what was going on, which sort of that campaign culminated in VOD being shuttered in 2023. Most observers would say shuttered because of their reporting in retaliation for their reporting on this issue. But since that moment, it has become increasingly difficult to operate in this space, either publicly or privately. So you have, over the last couple years, multiple NGOs claiming that the government, that officials have implored them to defocus on this, threatening them that their MOU would be in question if they continue to focus on the issue. Even victim shelters have been discouraged from taking on victims. Civil society, foreign embassies, international observers have been sort of boxed out from the processes of victim identification, rescue, repatriation, and mountains, true mountains of disinformation pour out of government mouthpieces on a daily basis, either mischaracterizing issues, defaming victims, calling them against all evidence, and the sort of stories that Michelle shared are just as true in Cambodia, calling them liars, attention seekers, and other terms of abuse. And again, impugning the motives of anyone who would report on this. And that's not just local reporters, but also international reporters. And just in the last couple of months, you've seen the Cambodian government publicly denounce statements and actions about this instance from the Korean government, the Japanese government, the UK government, the EU, the US, and on and on and on. So like actually clearly deprioritizing bilateral relationships in the service of protecting and sustaining this industry. So that's the sort of bleak context within which Mek Dara was arrested on September 30th of this year. And along with being a friend and an able co-collaborator for a number of years, Dara, I feel very confident to say, was both the best and also the last of local Cambodian reporters working on this issue. And I would say his arrest can only really be viewed as the completion of a 2.5-year project of systematic repression. So that sort of leads to the question of why. Why did this feisty reporter last 9 years under Hun Sen and only 1 year under Hun Manet? Why did human trafficking, the most vanilla of all human rights advocacies in most country contexts in terms of threat to government interests, how does that become a national security threat to the Cambodian government? And why, after 3 years of mounting international pressure, do we see the regime brutally sort of doubling down on some of those issues? And I would say two answers to that. First has to do the underlying nature of the CPP. Elite criminality has sort of been in their DNA for a while. Many of these people came up as drug runners and gun runners before they were co-opted into the party. The party has been involved in illegal logging, land grabbing, wildlife trafficking, and a whole host of other things for a number of years. Phil mentioned Neil Laughlin's book. Neil's coming, late next week. Politics of Coercion as a really good introduction to this phenomenon. If what I'm saying sounds crazy, please, I would commend that event to you. But basically, Laughlin argues that this marriage of a fully criminalized economic engine with a very tightly controlled state party is the primary explanation for the durability of this sort of degrading institution of the CPP, despite sort of gross unpopularity, lots of abuses, et cetera. So political economic reality in Cambodia is one explanation for this. The other is the sheer scale of what we're seeing here. And essentially, as criminal investment and know-how has come pouring into Cambodia, and these sort of imported criminals, predominantly mainland China originating, but from a lot of places, have become co-perpetrating crimes with the local elite, there's this sort of perfect storm that has emerged. And the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, the U.S. Institute of Peace have estimated that as much as half of the formal GDP of Cambodia is deriving from this single criminal industry. USAID's counter-trafficking in persons program recently estimated 150,000 people working in the space, and we know the compounds are owned by the most powerful people in the country: senators, ministers, friends, family advisors to the prime minister. So given all of that, you could look at this industry as something that the CPP almost certainly views as too big to fail, and probably has for a number of years. And so that explains, I guess, a bit of the mounting pressure on civil society, and particularly the arrest of Daraa as some of these first concrete consequences started to descend on the regime in September this year. So 2 weeks before Daraa was arrested, one of the country's most powerful oligarchs, Leon Pat, was hit with sanctions by the U.S. Treasury Department. 8 hours before he was arrested, President Biden announced sanctions for the first time ever against Cambodia as a result of their failure to meet basic trafficking in person standards. And I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but that's a pretty wild coincidence that your sort of top investigative journalist gets arrested days, hours subsequent these things. So it's a bleak picture for the future of our ability to observe and combat this. But I do see sort of one key reason to hope that I'll just note as I'm closing, and that is namely in the nature and the efficacy of the outcry following Daraa's arrest. Now, Daraa has a lot of friends in the media. He's gotten those from being a good journalist and a courageous one for a decade, but also because he's played a really pivotal role in international reporting on Cambodia on a number of key issues for a number of years. So he has a lot of friends with big megaphones. He was always going to get a good shout if something bad happened. But I think his release also points to the fact that there is increasing recognition in seats of power in governments around the world of the direct global importance of the issue that he was working on. And so yes, like in no way should we decenter human trafficking, the horrific and in many ways historically unprecedented concentration of rights abuses that are occurring in this space. But it is also true, and something that we can be hopeful about, that this emerging from this crisis of state-driven crime are significant national, regional, and global security threats. And lastly, strong, independent, locally situated reporting has been and will continue to be a really vital tool for understanding and responding to those threats. But that local reporting is now effectively neutralized in Cambodia, and that should be setting alarm bells off around the world.
Yeah. Can you also say something about what's going on in Laos?
Yeah, so I mean, in Laos, there is most of this is concentrated special economic zones. In Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone is the sort of the big one, but there are a number of other ones. We would estimate about 80,000 people working in that industry, so just slightly smaller than the Myanmar and Cambodian industries. The Laos civil society is even in a, I would say, bleaker position, even fewer organizations working to respond. While there's a couple of NGOs working under the radar and a couple of local journalists in Cambodia, a couple on the border in Mesot, there's no one who has access to Golden Triangle Special Economic Zone in a meaningful way. And actually a major part of the situation in Laos is that the Lao government, it's actually quite up in the air and of question to what extent they now even have any remaining sovereignty in that space. There has been some crackdowns, at least superficial crackdowns in Golden Triangle over the last couple of months, and you've seen Lao law enforcement responding and returning to that area for the first time in many years, but still definitely remains a question to what extent can they or civil society respond to what's going on there. So.
And I understand that the major owner of that has also been sanctioned by the U.S. as well.
Yeah, so sanctions, a viable option for holding people accountable, but totally imperfect. Yeah.
Yeah, right. What's interesting, actually, you saw that scene where those group of people were fleeing past the guards and jumping in a river where they're actually swimming across the river into Vietnam. Many of those were Vietnamese, That was escape. I think it was in 2022. Maybe was it?
Yeah, late 2022.
Yeah.
So in that compound actually had been reported to officials as having victims of trafficking as early as February 2022, and so that was August, September 2022,
Right.
and the people with the big sticks chasing them were wearing uniforms that we believe they match very closely the uniforms of the Prime Minister's bodyguard unit, yeah, 2 people died in that escape attempt, and you saw at that point 2 countries ranked as tier 3 countries on the State Department's tip report. One chasing and beating victims, and the other swooping into the river to save people. So
Right.
some serious differentiation even at the very bottom. So.
But I would say also, is my understanding that a number of the people who actually swam across the river to escape were then subsequently arrested by the Vietnamese authorities when they got on the other side, and then prosecuted.
Yep, there was a mix of prosecutions and victim IDs. Yep.
So one of the issues, and we're gonna hear from our next speaker about this very important issue. One of the issues that comes up is you have these group of people in these trafficking and scam centers. How do you know who's the boss and who's the assistant and who's the victim? To help us sort that out, we're going to hear now from Natapop Sungkait. He's a feature writer from Thailand. He's a journalist who has been involved in reporting on human rights issues. He has written extensively about human trafficking, especially its impacts on the people of Thailand, and does a lot of investigative, in-depth stories, trying to represent the kind of underrepresented stories that we're talking about tonight. So, over to you, please.
Okay, I think I want to add more from the video, right? When the police say about you have the boss from China, you have the line manager from Thai. I think it's difficult to define them. And I think one thing that's missing from the video I think about the motivation why the people got scammed to work at the scam center, right? And I think now the problem is that the Thai society, the Thai authority still blame them as a criminal. And my work from last year, I have been trying to follow the victim who got scammed in Myanmar, in Laos, and then came back to Thailand. I want to start from the human story. I met one guy from Mae Sai, the Chiang Rai border with Myanmar. I think he is 18 years old and living in the abandoned house, no electricity, no bed, no kitchen, with his wife that pregnant around 6 months. And you can imagine the people who live in the abandoned house, no electricity, no money. Even he worked in a construction, but the employee just stole their money. And then I think for the people who got scammed, the main factor is the economic issue. I mean, people will go to work with the compound in Cambodia, in Myanmar. It means they have no choice in their life. And then when they got some advertisement from Facebook, I want to highlight from Facebook because it is a really important platform that the scam center use Facebook as a tool to scam people, and allow the beginning of this year, we contact the Meta company and told them about this situation, and then they reply us that they try to censor and try to work on this kind of the content. They told us they delete a lot of the content about scam, but the problem still until now, I still can see the advertisement, advertisement from the Facebook. Facebook is still the main tool for the scam center to use to scam people, and I haven't seen the reaction from Meta as they told me. But in the real situation, it's really important to the channel to scam people, and you can imagine then when people don't have any choice, right? So when you saw the one post in the group that was told you that okay, we have job for you, they pay around to 20 or 30,000 baht, because for them in Thailand they can get maybe 5,000 baht per month, and you can imagine, right? You get 20,000, and the work they say maybe admin or something is easy, you can work, and they help you everything to the visa, the passport, for the ticket. And then I think Thailand, we don't have the compound. We have compound in Cambodia, right, in Laos, in Myanmar, but Thailand is a transition, really important transition for the Chinese scam, to send people. Sometimes they send from Myanmar back to Thailand and then send to Cambodia. I think Thailand is really important geographic, to let the scam operation. And yet then when the victim agree to work with them, right, they send them to Myanmar, to Cambodia, they will know that they have to scam people when they go inside. And then when you go inside, you have no choice. You have to obey them. Even in the video, when the police, Thai police say that some Thai people have to help the Chinese scammer, to scam people. One person I interviewed, now he's still on the jail in Chiang Rai. He used to be the translator in Thailand and then got scammed to Myanmar. When he was in Myanmar, he had to be the translator to Chinese to communicate with Thai people, with Thai victim. The problem is when the victim execute from the Myanmar, from the Cambodia to Thailand, right? If they are the foreigner, sometimes they got help from the embassy or some process. They have, now Thailand have the mechanism that, have the interview process to scan which one is a victim, which one is a human trafficker. So the one point I have seen for my investigative report is this mechanism have a gap. I mean, in this mechanism, right, in the interview process, we don't have the one organization who take care of the interview process. We have a lot, maybe from Chiang Rai, from Mae Sot, from Bangkok, and I can say that some police don't have knowledge about human trafficking. They just another person, when he went back from Lao Cai to Bangkok, right, he got to the interview process with the officer in Bangkok, and then the officer told him that he is innocent. It means he's a victim, not trafficking. And another that I mentioned, the translator, he went back from Myanmar. He got interviewed from Chiang Rai, but that guy is unlucky. The police blame them as a trafficker because he paid the law as a translator. So the Chiang Rai police sent them to the jail, and then I come back to the victim in Bangkok, that part the interview, right? I get a chance to talk with them after they went back from the interview to stay in the Bangkok, try to find the job, to have the more normal right again. But unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he got the paper from the police that he is a criminal. And after 1 month, the police catch them and then send them to Chiang Rai jail. It's still now. And the point I want to highlight is, when we talk about the scam center, it's a really huge issue. We have many angles, right? But I think fraud criminality is one angle that I think now people still ignore it because people still think that someone who went to work with a scam is a scam, but it's not. Yes, maybe someone he want to go and work as a scammer, but you have to know that most of them went to work. They have no choice. They just want money. But the problem is, even they went back to Thailand, the state blame them as a criminal, and it's hard to clarify that he are innocent. And this is not happen in Thailand. Also, it happened in Malaysia, in Vietnam, and also in China. But in China, it's really hard to know anything inside, because when the victim went back to Chinese, we cannot find the information from them. It's hard. And yeah, I think this one I want to highlight, and it is the one that I report in my work. But come back to the big picture as a Thai media and local media. I think this this scam center is a really huge problem, and it's become bigger and bigger. And I haven't seen from Thai government that focus on or do something like really aggressive. They just do something like pretension, like a protect by advertisement people to to be careful from the scam. But I know it's hard, but when I went to Mitchell in Masot, and we have Thai and Myanmar border, right? And in Thai side, we have the small village, and we have the small soil camp, to take care of the border. But we have the Mui River. The Mui River is really small, right? Only you can walk, and when you walk, you jump out over the river, you can see the really big compound, and inside is thousands and thousands people around the world got human trafficking inside. But Thai government cannot do anything. Yet it's hard because it's the Myanmar state, and they have some additional rule. But I expect that to see more action from the Thai authority to stop or do something more to stop this happen. And I mean this happened. The victim is not from Southeast Asia, but now I think the target is moved and is specific. Especially when I talk with my colleagues, now even they target about the gay people in Thai and in Myanmar, because they want to scam gay people. So they will looking for the gay man and scam them to work, and just target the gay victim so they can scam easily. I mean the scam is very huge, and when the police say that the Chinese bot, he really intelligent, but I don't think he intelligent. But you have to know that the scam business is not only the small operation, but it's a huge company, right? I think when I talked with the victim, they told me that inside they have human resource departure, they have accounting departure. It means they are the company, they are like the big company like a Google, like a Facebook. They have the departure, they have human resource departure, they have accounting departure. So I think to deal with this huge operation, we need a lot of effort to put on them. But now I haven't seen enough effort from the media, also from the government side. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's very interesting. It sounds like, not only are the even when they're rescuing the victims, they're not effectively identifying them, which is interesting because one of the core principles of best practices towards human trafficking is that people who are trafficked are not to be held liable for crimes that were committed because they were forced to do it, because they were trafficked. But it seems to me that there's an arbitrary element to this, that like the decision that's made by one panel in Chiang Rai is different from what's made in Bangkok. How do they deal with that issue? How do they solve that problem? I mean the Thai government, I think, has the resources, but
the case that I mentioned, the guy from Bangkok and went to the jail in Chiang Rai, they got interviewed in Bangkok, right, and then got the document from the government that he was innocent. And then when he got the paper from the Chiang Rai police that he was the criminal, so he went to the government agency and asked them that he want the document that told that he are innocent, but we cannot file out the document.
They wouldn't give that document?
No, and also the agency in Bangkok and in Chiang Rai, they not contact each other. It from different. I mean, even they are the police, right? But the police have many sectors. The sector from Chiang Rai not contact with the Bangkok police. Even the Bangkok police, I think they know that he is innocent, but he cannot do anything for him. He have to prove on the court, but on the court process, he cannot go out. He have to went to the jail because
he's in pretrial detention.
Yes, it's hard to win.
So how long has he been in detention for?
Minimum is 15 years. 15.
No, not the sentence, but right now he's still for prison for how long?
From December until now, it's almost 1 year.
So almost 1 year waiting.
At least 7 people from Lao Cai.
Waiting trial.
Yeah, waiting trial.
Right.
7 people. But also another case, not only in Chiang Rai, it's also another case. But I don't know the number exactly because no one, calculate the number of the false criminal.
Yeah, and I mean, my understanding is when people are, like, for instance, rescued from these scam centers in Cambodia, they're also being criminalized for illegal entry and for other things by the Cambodian authorities. Is that still correct, or?
Yeah, it is, and it's an interesting situation in Cambodia where you have almost exclusively the Cambodian government classifying these people as criminals, as illegal migrant workers, refusing to classify them as victims, and that's emerging. You can look at the situation in Thailand and say maybe this is emerging from resource gaps, capacity gaps. There's some clear incentives misalignments happening in Cambodia as well. The semi-encouraging factor in that is that a large percentage of victims who are getting out, maybe they're being classified as a criminal in Cambodia, but their passport country will classify them as a victim. But that is it puts the victims at a significant risk of being re-victimized. There's a pretty recent case coming out of Cambodia. It was a boyfriend and girlfriend. The boyfriend was Indonesian. He went home. He got classified as a victim. The woman came to Thailand and was classified as a criminal. They were doing the exact same thing. They had both been lured under the exact same pretenses. The Cambodian government said they were both criminals. One government agreed, one government disagreed, and the woman's facing prosecution under very similar circumstances, and her boyfriend has actually come back from Indonesia to serve as an expert witness in her case. So it's like these sorts of like really tragic stories are sort of definitional to what's this space and what's going on.
Right.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
So I just want to point out too that it is very different under the national referral mechanism in Thailand for foreigners and Thais. They're treated very differently, but with the cases from Laos, they were interviewed and identified in Chiang Rai, and Chiang Rai wasn't trialing the NRM at the time. They had very few police that were even trained in victim identification, so they were, for want of a better term, making it up as they go along, doing the best that they could. And now it is a little bit different. There's training nationally that's been rolled out from several different agencies. Attorney General's Department, UNODC is doing a lot of work with the government, especially the non-punishment principle. But there's still a lot of work to be done there. And it is a very, very big difference between treating or identifying victims of trafficking who are foreigners. So from Ethiopia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Pakistan to Thai nationals.
Right. Now, Michelle, I wanted to ask you actually another question, which was, you've seen all these compounds being built across the border from Thailand, but I think we all recognize that there's currently a civil war going on in Myanmar since the February 2021 coup. So the question is, what are these parts of Burma? Who's controlling them? Who's providing the sort of the resources and the place for these compounds to set up? I mean, is it militias? Is it government of Myanmar? I mean, who is it?
We get asked this a lot too by victims. Why can't you just go in there and shut them all down? If you ask the Myanmar government, they will give you the standard line of, I'm sorry, we can't help you. The compounds are in armed ethnic group controlled areas. We're in a civil war right now. It's not our problem. It's theirs to deal with. You go to the armed ethnic groups and they go, we don't have anything to do with this. We're just trying to defend our people. Yet all of the compounds up and down the border are all in armed ethnic group territories, and there's multiple groups. It's DKBA, KNU, BGF, and they all have their different areas that they all also have a different relationship with compounds. Some ethnic armed group leaders are heavily invested in owning companies within the compounds. Some have invested in actually setting up the compounds. Others are employed or hired to protect the compounds and the land around them. So to get in and out of the compound, you have to pay the ethnic armed group to be able to get into the place, pay them to get out. It's not just a matter of victims being able to get out of the compound. They might have to pay a ransom to get out that kicks them out the door. They still have to get through armed ethnic group territories and then be smuggled across the river into Thailand, because you can't get all the way back to Yangon to get out. So it's a very complicated process to get in and out, but the system that's been set up, you have your very, very complex business model for running a compound. You have compound directors, you have companies within, so it's almost like a illegal business park. But then where they're situated is in rural areas, so they're surrounded by rice fields, cornfields and jungle, and all of those areas are then controlled by ethnic armed groups, and each ethnic armed group has their own special arrangement with the compound that they are either protecting or involved with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is it's sort of like a million militias with different compounds that they're protecting, making money.
Yes, even like just between Miyawadi and KK Park, there's like 30 different checkpoints, and they're all operated and run by different people. So you've got to pay every time you go through these checkpoints. It's only about 15 Ks.
Wow, okay. We're going to open the floor for questions. You have to go to the microphone in the back. If you want to ask a question, you need to identify yourself, also your affiliation if you have any. Please also indicate who you want to direct your question to. So please go ahead. No, but Mike, Kanana.
Hello. Hi, I'm Dan. I'm Burmese American. I've been encountered with those Trikoko and Laos area people who are operating these scamming, and as well as they are fundamentally based in Facebook and all the dating app, and they try to persuade you to get involved. And Sri Coco is handled by the Chitu, is a BGF, and he associates with the Burmese government. They are having a lot of coordinating with one another. Sri Coco is the region where all the scamming has took place, and Laos, which is the northern Shan state in Burma. So people try to persuade you in the dating apps, mostly foreigner and other people who try to find a partner or whatever, and they try to make you involved in those. But BGF, they bribe to the KNU, and KNU has the 7th division, and they have been subsidiary bribing all the way to Burmese government. So they got involved in those. So how do we report those who encounter those? I mean, what kind of Interpol and any other association that try to interfere or anything at all, those scamming, and not just only scamming, there's a money laundering and all the things that crime, all the people from the Philippines, Malaysia, all over the world, all the IT, as you mentioned, that they have an organization, they have an accounting firm, they have a IT group, they all very systematically organized. Not only just in Sri Coco, which is the current state Mesau area, and Laos, which is the northern, not just raided by the Three Brother group in the northern Burma.
So the question is, how do we hold these people accountable for what is happening over there?
How do we report it? How do we make it that they're aware of? Because it's involved with the Burmese government as well as the BGF, Border Guard Patrol, which is controlled by the Chitu.
Okay.
It's a Karen
So
group.
to the panel, the panel is, looking at the situation in Myanmar, how do we have accountability? How do we find accountability or demand accountability, what are the recommendations? What should be done?
Okay. So I'll answer the
And speak into the microphone too.
earlier part of the question. So there is no one body that is investigating this. There's no one task force that has come together. Interpol is doing research. There are NGOs on the ground collecting data from victim statements to develop a clearer picture of what's happening, and then putting that research, passing that intelligence onto different law enforcement agencies. That is a very complicated process, and it is very narrow. So you're talking about connecting victims to perpetrators and then following the trail from there. There are other larger entities investigating money laundering and crypto wallets, trying to trace the money and track the money, see where that goes and who that links to. In terms of what we can do to stop it, while Myanmar is in civil war right now, there isn't anything that the government will be focusing on to stop that. They're benefiting from it. It's fueling the civil war. Ethnic armed groups are benefiting from it. It's fueling what they're doing. They're getting paid to be a part of this. Nobody wants to stop it over there. So unless you have something like sanctions being applied and then that can put a lot of pressure on them. But at the moment, there isn't any entity that I know of in Myanmar that is involved with these scamming compounds that wants to shut it down.
I think they're not going to shut down.
Please go ahead.
I will try to answer. I don't know if right or wrong, but I think the one character that affect to the scam compound to both countries like Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos is the Chinese government. If you remember in Laos, right, last year November, when the Chinese government unhappy with the Laos situation, so he just told something and then the Laos just disappeared, right? And then they moved to Myanmar, and now in Myanmar I think also I heard some news that the Chinese also unhappy with the something happened in the like Shwe Koko. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think he might move to somewhere else, even in Cambodia and Laos. I think the situation will change when the Chinese government announcement something, or because you have to know, right, the Chinese government really affect with Myanmar, with Cambodia and Laos. They influence both these countries, and I think it's hard to to answer, but I think the Chinese is the one really important and really powerful character in this issue.
It's happened in Philippines and Nigeria. All these are involving.
Yeah. Jake,
So,
you got it?
yeah,
please go ahead.
Right. So I think absolutely China has a significant role to play in. I'd say, first of all, while it's definitely true that the resistance EAGs do not have their hands clean in this situation, the vast majority of the compounds exist, yes, in EAG-controlled territory, but Myanmar junta-aligned EAG-controlled territories. That's the truth, both up in Tachi Lake and in by the Chinese border and in Myawaddy. So when you're looking at Chinese government response to this, vis-a-vis the way the rest of the world has been able to respond, that, like, if you're looking at a law enforcement response, especially starting about a year ago, you started seeing isolated crackdowns on compounds in Cambodia, as well as more systematic crackdowns on compounds in northern Myanmar by the Chinese border, which ultimately resulted in about 40,000 people being deported back to mainland China, some of the kingpins arrested. And that had a very destabilizing impact on Myanmar military-controlled areas in northern Myanmar. And I think what you've seen in more recent months is the Chinese government realizing we've destabilized them to the point where they may actually lose this conflict. And you've actually seen a softening of the response of the Chinese government on the military that has allowed some of these compound-infested areas to regain traction, regain steam. Similarly, in Cambodia, where a lot of the displacement from this issue moved to as the sort of Chinese border area was destabilized, as well as Myawaddy, basically the only law enforcement response you've seen have been crackdowns which look almost transparently like they were pressured by the Chinese government to the Cambodian government, because they are Chinese citizens that are being rescued. And so I think if you're looking at the Chinese government's response, it has been a very, to borrow the euphemism, like China first policy. So you're looking at Chinese scam victims, Chinese trafficking victims, but that has had the sort of malign effect of displacing this onto other nationalities, other languages, predominantly English speaking, but a lot of others as well. That's not to say there are still lots of Chinese victims on both sides of this, probably still the lion's share, but the proportion is shifting pretty rapidly. In terms of what the international community beyond China could be doing, it is, like my co-panelists have suggested, a very imperfect situation, particularly when you're not willing to sort of cross international borders to arrest perpetrators. But sanctions, targeted sanctions on individuals that we know are perpetrating this. Sachet 2 has been invoked. I will say, like, that would be a good person to sanction for anyone who has that stick to wield. And there are a number of others within the Myanmar context, the Cambodian and the Lao context, that we have eyes on, evidence on, but sanctions are a really long and sort of politically contentious and high evidentiary threshold process in all the countries that wield them. There are also, other measures like visa bans, travel restrictions, indictments where jurisdictions are crossing into higher governance areas. And then broader-based things like the Cambodian financial system may be the most powerful money laundering instrument in the world. And they were removed from the FATF gray list, which is the only mechanism that we have to prevent that, about 18 months ago as this issue is coming to public light. So that would be a good place to start as well for the international community. Those are not going to be silver bullets or things that are going to fix this. Maybe the last thing I'll say is that tech companies and financial institutions that are enabling this on their platforms also probably need to, there needs to be some regulatory and legal oomph to bring them to the table to make sure that they're responding in good faith as well.
So my last question, how do we...
excuse me, I mean, we've got other people waiting for
how
questions.
How do we report those? Is there any website or anything that public awareness, some program that people should be...
Yeah, come up afterwards and we'll discuss that. Yeah, please go ahead.
Robin Shell, member of the club. I think mine's a quick question, but approximately how many people are being conned into either allowing themselves to be trafficked or scammed in some way? What's the number roughly, and what nationalities? China, obviously, but you mentioned Ethiopia. Where are most of them coming from? And gender breakdown and age breakdown would be interesting, and how people are lured into this. Apart from the people who are just kidnapped, how are those who choose to do it, how are they lured into it?
Okay. I just want to address the whole allowing themselves to be conned. This is not maybe that's just a poor choice of words, but generally people are looking for employment. Since 2020, we had COVID-19, everybody was in dire situations. We all need jobs, right? Across the globe, we need work. The victims are coming from nations that have a struggling economy anyway, or they're in civil war. So, for example, countries like Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, lots of Southeast Asian nations as well. They have been applying for jobs online or going to recruitment agencies like everybody else does for employment and applying for what they think is legitimate job ads. When this first started, the scamming companies were targeting skilled individuals, so people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, specializing in engineer software, accounting, forensic accounting, and all speaking, having very, very good English speaking skills. So they were very highly educated individuals, not people just kind of applying for some random ad and then flying off into the middle of nowhere without doing their due diligence. There are scamming companies that spoof websites. So when you type in, I don't know, what is it? Grey's Academy online, and you're going to go and do sales and marketing for them. You type in their web address and up comes their website. There's a HR department, there's all the different offices, the managers, everything's listed there. It looks legit. You might have a Zoom interview with a panel of experts that you would be working for. So your manager, the director, the HR manager, and then your recruiter. You might have 2 or 3 Zoom interviews, which is legitimate for when you're applying for a job online. You go through different stages and you get to the next stage. Yes, you've been approved. Okay, now you have to do a skills-based test or whatever it is. By the time they got to the point where they were approved for the job, they were sent contracts, they were emailed their itinerary, their travel was arranged for them. They got on the plane and they came over to Thailand, Cambodia, wherever, and then they were met by a driver with their name placard on it. So it all looks legit. You get into the car and then you're transported across the country. Say if you come to Thailand, you come to Suvarnabhumi Airport. They tell you there's always a reason for something, right? So you might be coming to a job in Bangkok, Thailand, but you have to go to the regional office in Mae Sot to meet the company director who's working there right now, and then we'll bring you back to Bangkok. So there's always a reason for something. There are alarm bells at times that go off when things don't add up, but every victim's experience is different. So they would get all the way down to Mae Sot, they're put into a hotel, and they are told, you came in on a tourist visa, we're going to transfer you over to a working visa. Can you please pass us your passport? We'll sort your visa out for you, and then you'll be picked up in the morning and you'll go to the company headquarters. The door, knock on the door at 3 a.m. in the morning. Get out of bed, come on, pack your things, we've got to go, we've got to go, we've got to go, and everything is in a rush. So you're half asleep, you're panicked, you're scrambling to get all of your stuff. You're piled into a car, and then you might change cars 3 or 4 times in the middle of the night, and they drive you around and around and around. If you have ever been to Mae Sot, you can get from one side to the other in 15 minutes. It is not a big town, right? They will drive them around for 2 or 3 hours, changing cars repeatedly to disorientate them. They'll walk them through a cornfield, right all the way down to the river in the middle of the night. So they have no idea where they are. The ones that are switched on and are ready or have some kind of, personal emergency plan might check their GPS, but the majority of victims don't actually know that they're crossing the river into Myanmar. They're crossing into another country. They're put on a boat, they go across the river. They're often met by armed guards if their escort isn't already armed, and they're always met by military in fatigues because it's ethnic armed groups. They are taken to the compound, they ask all their questions. Why am I here? What's happening? I was applied for a sales and marketing job. Where's my recruiter? I can't get my agent on the phone. Nobody answers your questions. You're told to shut up and sit down. In the early days, they used to treat you like a king for the first month. They'd pay your salary, they'd give you food, they'd put you in a hotel. This is in KK Park. And then they would start getting harsher and more stricter, and they would force you into scamming. So they gave you a period of time to get used to the compound. They eased you into the job, you did a lot of training, and then you were launched into the scamming. Nowadays, you arrive in the compound, you put your bags down, and you go straight to work. And if you're not willing to scam and you have the audacity to say, I'm not doing this, then they beat the living crap out of you until you comply. So it's not a matter of they're choosing to be tricked into it. It is a very, very sophisticated, complicated process, very well thought out, and it changes continually. And we've found across the years that we all know that Australians trust Australians, Brits trust Brits, right? An Ethiopian recruiter recruiting other Ethiopians, you already trust them to a certain point because they're your national kin, right? You would never trick me because you're Ethiopian. So why would you lie to me? So there is already that, it's kind of like that third-party recommendation rapport that they build up by having a national recruit their own nationals. And so these companies have this very, very sophisticated network across the globe now of national recruiters targeting their own people.
So maybe absolutely right, 100%. That's been my experience in watching this in Cambodia as well, and I think that's pretty reflective of the consensus. In terms of raw numbers, which is, I think, part of the question, within the region, just these three countries, you're looking at somewhere between 300 and 350,000 people. So 80,000 in Laos is the sort of accepted estimate, 120,000 Myanmar, somewhere between 100 and 150,000, depending on who within the U.S. government you ask about this, or within the UN system. 66 nationalities confirmed as victims. It's also important to say that this exists elsewhere outside the region, first of all, and the estimate of labor force goes up, the more countries you include, but just within those countries. It also should be stated that not every single one of those people is necessarily a victim. And if anyone tries to give you an exact number on the number of people who are, they're lying to you, or they don't know what they're talking about. And the reason for that is because we don't have any ability to actually go in there and effectively assess. And the countries that have sovereignty over these areas, or have failed to secure sovereignty over these areas, have perverse incentives to keep people from systematically assessing the answer to that question. So.
Apologies to you, had a male-female breakdown to your question, right? So in Myanmar, out of our cases, we've had 892 now so far. 77% have been male. But over the last 6 months, there's been more females come out because the amount of female recruiters has increased. And then we're also seeing a lot more gender-based violence cases come out, in coupling that with human trafficking as well.
Okay. Next question, please.
Hello, Tom, associate of the FCC. In 2023, I had to make a solo visa run to Savannakhet, which to my understanding is not a special economic zone. When I was there, hardly anything seemed to be going on. I happened to make the mistake of catching the very last bus over the Friendship Bridge. There were no lights, there was no transport. I walked all the way to the city center. 3 weeks ago, it was reported in the Bangkok Post that a high-speed internet cable was embedded inside of the Friendship Bridge, that very Friendship Bridge, installed by a company that was licensed by the NBTC. I don't know if mistakes were made or whatever, however that occurred, but the sophistication of such a thing over a bridge connecting two states, a cross-border bridge. My question is, the profit of the global industry seems to has the potential to destabilize states, to corrupt and destabilize states, perhaps even more so than the global drug trade, with the rise of crypto and so on, potential legalization of crypto in the US, and who knows with the Chinese market. Is it possible that, where is this going? How big could this get, is my question, essentially. The question mostly to Jake here.
It's going to get pretty damn big.
Yeah.
Next response. No. So yeah, I mean, like, absolutely. I don't think there's potential for this to destabilize economies in the region. It has already happened in a really profound way.
Yeah.
In terms of its possibility for growth and how the corruptible power of this vis-a-vis the drug trade, it's already rivaling the drug trade in the region in terms of scale, and it's been in existence at scale or growing to whatever its eventual scale will be for a few years, whereas the drug trade's been in existence for a century or so. So I think it's remarkably scary. I think we have no idea what the ceiling is for this, and ultimately the strategy for law enforcement, foreign affairs agencies, tech companies, everyone who's trying to combat this needs to be a realistic one. We talked about this last week at a similar event. That's not this utopian. We're not going to solve this, eradicate this. We need to figure out how to raise costs of doing business, reduce profit margin, like constrain what that ultimate ceiling is going to be, because everywhere this thing touches, it destroys lives through human trafficking, abuse, financial exploitation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like you said, regional, global destabilization of markets and politics, et cetera. But we don't have an answer for how big it's going to grow. And it certainly, I think the U.S. Institute of Peace published a report in May that stated front and center, this is the most powerful criminal network in the modern era. And this is an understated sort of U.S. government-funded research institution, not really big on making like sort of exaggeratory claims, and I think that's bearing out in the evidence that we're seeing, the scale of this, the just rapidity of growth, and the way that it's sort of fundamentally undermined some of the core, guiding principles by which we look at regional economics and politics. So,
yeah, it seems the decentralized nature of it especially makes it almost at every whack-a-mole. Every time you find one of them pops up, even over a friendship bridge. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the panelists. Thank you.
I wanted to actually follow on to a premise there where you have Thailand extending high-speed internet across into Savannakhet. There was a reporter actually reporting on these issues about 2 years ago, went around the borders of Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, and basically found that all these scam centers were running on primarily Thai mobile phone networks or internet. That a number of them were using, in fact, electric hookups from Thailand. So, what is Thailand's role in this? A lot of people are coming in to find jobs in Bangkok and then basically being transported to Mae Sot or to the Cambodian border. So, what really is happening here in Thailand, and how is that contributing to the issues of the scam centers in neighboring countries?
I think first you have to know that in the border, Thai, Myanmar, Cambodia, Thai, Cambodia, and Thai, Laos, the people are very close. I mean, they can cross the border by the boats, by walking, and even the family, they have both sides. So it's common, to have like internet, share internet. Even some Lao people watching the TV from Thai channel, and yet you have to know the Myanmar and Cambodia, Laos, they rely on the Thai society many things, as we are more developed than them, but it also is. I think Thai have to take responsibility to. I think the important thing is about how you, because you are the important time position for the this compound, right? So you have to take action to screen people, right? Yeah, you can see the sign, in the airport they have the sign and try to tell people that they have the scam, but it's not enough. And I mean, as a Thai people and speak to the government, I think it's also not easy. When you see the border, even only Thai Myanmar border, we have more than 6,000 kilometers, and it's really hard, to checkpoint every area, and it's hard, but also you have to take some action very clear, because now you can see in Mae Sot, right, the border, people can just send something by the in the border point, checkpoint, you can just send something maybe in construction that they build a compound. I do believe that many of the like cement or many things it come from Thailand and built in Myanmar. You cannot ignore that many things is get support from Thailand, especially internet, banking, and I do believe that many of the Chinese scam business, they are in Thailand, do some business. We have seen a lot from the news. If you research, even someone that build a foundation or something, just do something, but in the behind they do the illegal stuff. And also, we can see that also Thai authorities try to do something, but it's not enough. And we just hope that the Thai government see this issue more serious than nowadays. And because this is not about the world, but it's about the Thai people. Because as I think Thai people got scammed is like a really high number, and if I'm not wrong, the amount of the money is more than 50,000 million baht a year that Thai people lose. And it's really hard for Thai society. And when you imagine that, okay, the victim might be the older people, right, but not. I have one friend, she is really high education. She got scammed around 100,000 baht by the call center scam. I mean, this issue is really near in Thai society, and everyone can got scammed by the call center. I have another mother friend who lost 2 million baht in 2 months because the romance scam, and the older person it feel shame, to tell the daughter. Yes, that the reason that why the Thai government have to take action more to protect their citizenship. We not talk about the citizenship from around the world, but only for Thai people. I haven't seen enough the action from of the Thai society. And the last thing I want to highlight is about the fourth criminal, because I think Thai authorities still blame the victim who got scammed to the compound as the criminal. So I know that this issue is just really happened around 3 years ago, and it's really new for the Thai law, because I think Thai law now it's not update, follow the situation. So we have to work on a lot to follow up to fight with the scam center. But also when we try to change the policy, change the law, the scam also change. Even the way they trafficking people from Thailand to Myanmar and Cambodia, I think they change every month. When the society, the media know the way they traffic people, we public, the media we report, then they change the way. So we have to follow them, but we always behind them. We have to try to follow them.
Other comments? Thailand?
I mean, yeah, that was pretty comprehensive. I would add a couple. I don't think it's a maybe that these places were constructed from Thai infrastructure. If you go up and down the border in Mae Sot and in around Mae Sot, there are no roads out of these compounds except for through Thailand, and you can see concrete trucks just moving back and forth to the border. So that's the problem that's in Thailand's house. They need to clean that. And yes, like you also can see visibly Thai cell tower, Thai cell tower, Thai cell tower, all spotting along the border, all the fins pointing into these places that are known hotspots of crime and human trafficking. The NBTC has done some things to try to crack down on that, but like my colleague here said, like when they do it, there's going to be a policy change within the compounds, reciprocal, and we now know that a lot of the compounds, okay, you cut off electricity, they start using generators. You cut off AIS towers, they start using Starlink, right? That doesn't, negate the fact that cement trucks are still rolling in, and that would be another thing we could stop and then make them have to innovate. But it's also true that these are very persistent criminals, right? And it's also true that the Thai government has done a lot. In Cambodia, I actually think my first event at FCCT was with you and Jason and an unnamed Thai law enforcement officer who was sort of basically pulling out his hair after a trip where he had announced previously that he was going to go get 3,000 people, Thai citizens, out of Cambodia, and he came back with 66.
Yeah, that was a big joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can name him. And that's a big face loss for the government. They were willing to admit that, and they're sort of wringing their hands and throwing their hands up in the air. That actually, they're like, okay, like we went over to this state that actually owes us, and they still couldn't get our own people out. And so I think it is important to recognize there's limitations to how much the Thai government can do. There's certainly more that they could be expected to do. And then maybe the last thing I would say is almost all these people are coming through one of the largest airports in the region, Savunaboom, and many of them, not all of them, but many of them report very, very suspicious immigration protocols. They're going around VIP, put it in a van, not going through normal immigration procedures. So that's there's a lot that the Thai government needs to get their house in order, but there's also things that they have done to improve and combat this. And when you look at their neighbors, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, it's hard to give them a score as low as those three. So.
Okay. Yes.
Hi. Is it on?
No, it's not. เปิดหรือเปล่าเนี่ย
Okay. Hi, my name is Henriette and I'm a member of the FCCT. I have a brief question to Michelle. At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned that one of the things you did was responding to people who contacted you from, if I understood properly, people who are still in the inside, and you support them in getting out and the whole journey to going to the outside. My question is really like, how do people contact you? How do they know you? Do they have a phone numbers inside the center? It seems to be like they're quite isolated from the outside world, and I just that seems to be a huge barrier to me. So how does that work? Thank you.
That's okay. So there's a few ways that you can get in touch with us. We work with, I think around 24, 25 different embassies now, representing different countries. They all have our number and they refer us cases. Other NGOs refer us cases. Or we have victims who we've helped get out of the compounds, and then they pass our numbers on to their friends who are still stuck inside. And so our numbers get shared around. Our organizations get shared around. Some victims will jump online while they're forced to be scamming and actually email through our websites. Some contact us through our personal social media. Some look at different documentaries or interviews that we've done and reach out through them, through the journalists or that way. So there's a variety of different ways that they get in touch with us. When they're in the compounds, sometimes their phones are taken off them, but sometimes they're also allowed to use the work phones. So depending on the type of company and the type of scam they're running, they might be managing 2 or 3 phones or 8 to 10 phones at any one time. And so sometimes they take the risk to use a work phone to reach out, but we're very strict on how we communicate with them. We don't just randomly chat all the time. We wait for them to reach out to us, because they have very random but very strict protocols they have to follow within each company. So their phones, all victims' phones are checked randomly throughout the day and the night. They're not allowed to have their personal phones outside of their rooms, and they're not supposed to make voice calls or video calls, so they're only supposed to text. So if they're caught with any photographs, any videos, any kind of contraband on their phone, when they're having them randomly checked, then they're immediately punished. So we have to be very careful with how we communicate.
And by punish, you mean physically abused, tortured?
Tortured, raped, thrown in the dark room, strung up by their wrists, beaten with metal pipes, denied food, lots of tasered is another one, lots of nasty things. It is very risky. So when they do, we have to really respect their safety and their bravery. Yeah.
Also get drugged.
Sorry?
They also get drugged, right?
Are they drugged?
Because the human trafficking or the female that in the Lao guy that we arrested 4 Thai female while in there, they have been working as on the restaurant or paying 100,000 Thai baht, but actually they are not. They're working as a prostitute. They were arrested. They have been in there. Some of them were killed already. Only 2 escaped out of 4. They were drugged when they had to contact authorities. They have no possibility of contacting you.
Okay. I haven't had any cases of that, but I didn't work on cases in Laos. That was up north.
I think the abuse it depends on the company. Yet it can happen. I think you can imagine it can happen. It depends on the employee. Some company might not abuse them, but some company can abuse them anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless there's any more questions, I think I'm going to call the evening and thank our panelists for this amazing reports about the situation that people are facing. I want to thank them for coming forward with all this information. Yeah.
There's one more.
More questions? I didn't see any. Oh, there is one more. Last question. Yeah, the staff wants to go home. They keep taking the mic away.
Sorry for taking some more time from you. I'm from Cambodia. I'm part
Can
of.
you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm program director for Cambodian Journalists Alliance Association. We work to support the release of Dara. And since this topic is quite interesting for me, as I'm a participant to a regional conference that just finished at the UN Conference Center. It's about just societies. So I think it's a bit a shame that this topic was not discussed at the regional level, especially among the UN agencies and the justice judiciary system. My question would be, how do you think, especially the panelists here, but everyone welcome, how should we engage the UN levels or the, promote more multilateral stakeholders approach to address this kind of issue? How, including the role of media as well, how can we do cross-border collaborative reporting, particularly between Thailand journalists and the Cambodian journalists? As you may know, Cambodian journalists are very, very oppressed right now. Even I myself, my husband is a journalist too. So we feel the risk is so high, but we still want to continue the reporting to be part of the solution. So how can we do this together? That's the question. Thank you.
About collaboration between the media. From my point of view, I haven't seen too much between Thai and Cambodia and Laos because it have the connection or some some event that bring us together. But now I can tell that between Thai and Myanmar journalists, we have a lot of the collaboration because we know that the situation in Myanmar that bring the Myanmar journalists have to work in Thailand, and then we get a chance to know each other. And even me, I did a lot of the report collaboration with the Myanmar reporter, especially with the cross border. But also I think with my media outlet, Hard Story, we also give the space to the Cambodia journalists to publishing the work in our website in Hard Story. Even make the Laos, I think I remember that he also did one story with Hard Story. So yeah, I think it's important, and now I can see that some organizations try to bring the Southeast Asia journalists to work together. I think apart 2 or 3 years until now, we have seen more opportunity to work with the Vietnamese journalists, Filipino journalists, and Indonesian journalists. I think maybe it just started, to collaboration, but I think it's a good time to see something change, to see some connection between the new journalists from Thailand, Malaysia, Myanmar, Cambodia, Indonesia, in Southeast Asia to work together. And yeah, I think we have to work more, to let them know each other. But we cannot do by themselves. We need support from international organization. Maybe it have many ways, right, to bring us together by the workshop, by the fellowship, by the grant. I think in many ways, and I can see now. And I think it will be increase more collaboration in the future. And we see because now when we talk about the issue, it's always cross-border issue. So the journalists have to work together as a cross-border issue. So we cannot work alone. We need partner. I think the new gen already know that, and we try to connect more.
Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's absolutely cross-border collaboration needed. I also would certainly recommend, and I think increasingly a best practice recommendation is when you're reporting on sensitive issues, similar to the tactic that a lot of the Myanmar press corps take of using pseudonyms, doing things to protect yourself, writing from positions of less vulnerability to the repression that we know is going to come and has consistently come for the last 2.5 years. But it's also, like, in terms of the UN and international involvement, it's up to the international community to demonstrate to these states that it's not acceptable to repress journalists that are working on any issue of human importance, but especially one that affects all of their own citizens. So, that's not a hopeful answer. I think Dara's case and the success that was there is sort of an outlier. I wouldn't count on that. But that's the responsibility of the international community, to try to create a situation where that freedom might start to come back a little bit. So thank you for the work that you're doing in Cambodia as a really exceptional outlet, working in a really hard space.
Yep. The last standing outlet, actually, almost. But no, we do like Cambodia. I read it on a regular basis. So do keep doing the great work that you're doing. I think that I would just say a couple things. I think that there are international donors that are supporting journalist collaborations. You can talk to these people. You can find them. I do think UN agencies and UN country teams need to be doing a lot more. Oftentimes the governments are very defensive, particularly in Cambodia and Laos, but that's not a good reason for a UN agency to back off. Too often you have UN officials who are more interested in preserving their careers than actually doing the right thing, and that's unfortunate. So I think that there needs to be a lot more awareness built, but then there also has to be, I think, various different countries like the U.S., Europeans, Australians, Canadians, and others whose own publics are being scammed to be looking at sanctions against some of the key players here. And I will just close on a quick anecdote about Chit 2, because I first came across Chit 2 back in 2008, 2009, when I was doing research for Human Rights Watch about migrant workers in Mae Sot. And at that time, he already had an extortion scheme going connected to corrupt officials in Thai immigration and deportation, where all the soft deportations were sent across the border to Chit 2 at his checkpoint. And he had brokers who would sort out where people had come from. In fact, he knew because he had the list from the Mae Sot immigration. So he knew who came from Bangkok, he knew who came from Phuket, he knew who came from where was that. And each person was charged a different amount of money depending on where they had come from in order to be released and allowed to go back to Thailand. So, this guy's been a criminal for 2 decades. And he's gotten away with it. So that's a telling indication that something's not working, especially when so many people know exactly what sort of person this guy is. So if the facilitators can get away with it, then it's not surprised the scam bosses are getting away with it as well. So on that sad note, I will thank you all for coming to the FCCT. If you're interested in rewatching this, it will be up on the FCCT YouTube channel, probably in a matter of a couple days. In fact, all our programs are up on the FCCT YouTube channel. So if you've missed something that you wanted to see last week or a month ago or several months ago, take a look at the FCCT YouTube channel and you can find it there. Again, thank you very much and good night.